Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. I shall we see what's going on a lovely island of Fawnhallow today, where I'm a bit late today, not because of D&D actually, but because of it's a pub quiz. I went to a pub quiz today. Did we win? No, we didn't. We had the competition actually. To be fair, the competition was actually both pretty good this time, and the questions didn't quite land in our favour towards the final rounds. So unfortunately, we came like sixth or so, but we still got some like sweets out of it, some candy. So really, we're one of the best losers, if anything. But yeah, good evening, everyone. Right now in Fawnhallow, it's 11:07 p.m. on Monday, August 5th, 2024. It's not like last time I did a pub quiz, not the most recent pub quiz, but pub quiz before that, where it was just like, oh, we were so close. We were literally one question off getting first, I think, or something. And it basically. Like afterwards, it was like, there was just like someone called, I think I said this, it was just like, there was a call my friend said on the last one, being like, this looks like Poland, and I said, no, let's not do it. I made a call, it was a wrong call to make, but sometimes you gotta make a call, and sometimes it's wrong. That's just how it is. I didn't know we were holding so many random things. But this time we were like honestly smoked. Like the team in the lead got like 50 points ahead of us, and it was like, okay, we'd have to get like 5 more questions right at least to even get that. So fair play, they won. But this time there's not as much like sort of like rue the day sort of. Well, I mean, not like I really regret it that much. I mean, it really doesn't matter. but there are, but perfectionism in me at least sort of goes be like, oh, I should have at least gotten this question right. There were a few questions I definitely should have got right, and the one that I think will stick with me, well, not stick with me, but one I'm just like, yeah, I definitely should have got that, was the one where it was basically like, what's a common name of like the animal which has a scientific name for pinniped, and it also has like leopard, ribbon, and I forgot the other type or varieties. And in my mind, bear in mind that you only have like about 10 seconds to give an answer. In my mind, I was like, I know pinniped. I've heard this before. So it's definitely an animal I'd know. It's not some obscure one. And in my mind, the only thing I could think of, I was like, I think it's an aquatic creature. And I was like, okay, leopard eels exist, ribbon eels exist. And I'm like, eel sounds kind of right to me. So I was like, okay, I think it might be an eel. And I was like, I don't know what the last one is. I don't know if that exists as an eel. So I guess eel. Turns out the answer was seal. So you can see how my brain thought it was eel instead. As I'm finding out, my brain works on not actually remembering the thing, but remembering the vibe of a thing. And part of the vibe is what it sounds like. And since seal and eel are so similar, my guess is that like eel is close enough that it triggers the same sort of response in thinking that's right. But now I sit down and think, if I had like a minute to answer, I think I probably would have got seal. I would have just had to think of it. But to my defense, both leopard eels and ribbon eels exist. I didn't know ribbon seals were a thing, so that's new to me. I can't remember what the other one is. The other one, probably that type of eel does not exist, but still. And also the other one, which I definitely should get right, there was an Olympics round where we had to guess like the pictograms from the Paris Games and say what the sport was. And there were a couple of them where I was just like, I don't know how specific we have to be. Turns out we didn't have to be that specific, because when like rowing sculls came on, I was like, do we have to say sculls or do we have to say rowing? Turns out we just had to say rowing. But one of them that came on was what used to be known as synchronized swimming, but is not anymore. It's now known as artistic swimming, which I remembered like they renamed it because I was looking at the list of the Olympic Games, like the Olympic events, really recently, and I was like, oh, they call it artistic swimming now. It's like, I didn't realize that. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, I saw it for synchronized swimming. Obviously, all my friends were like synchronized swimming, so normally I was the one pressing the button, and when they saw me hesitating, they leapt in to press S because they were like, that's synchronized swimming, which is totally fair. Right move to do, like 90% of the time. But this was a 10% of the time where I was just like, I know this is wrong. I know for sure. I just need like 10 more seconds to figure out what it actually was. Do I rue the day that I got it wrong? No. I wrote more that I didn't get it faster. Because no one got that one right, but I actually knew that one, which is a bit of a shame. But you got to act quickly in these buzzer sort of rounds. But honestly, it was just like, honestly, the other people just did well. Like, there's not much to say about it. They did well enough, so they deserve to win. But I will say there's a very weird and funny one, which I got wrong. But they displayed the symbol, the pictogram for athletics, and then when it came around to doing the answers, it was like, this is basketball. And he was just like, it came from an official source, and everyone in the pub was just like, what? there's no way this is basketball. I've looked it up now. It was athletics, so they got it off by 1 on the site. Because I was thinking about, like, afterwards, as I was like heading back home, I was like, there's no way that symbol was not athletics and was basketball. I could believe something like marathon maybe, but there's no way, because like it didn't even have a basketball in the pictogram. There's no way. A basketball is such an iconic, recognizable symbol. There's like no shot that was basketball instead of athletics, and I looked it up and I'm absolutely certain it was athletics. I just sent it to my friends now as well. Not similarly outraged, because I'm gonna be honest, I'm not that outraged, but it was very much like, as I was like heading home, I was thinking about it. I was like, there's no way like that makes any sense. I'm at least glad to see that. I was right. It makes no difference to a quiz, because I think literally everyone put athletics and got it wrong, or maybe like one team didn't. So it really had no effect on the standings. But it's really a fun time, and honestly, I genuinely enjoy the pub quizzes. It does make me sometimes wish I was a little bit better at quizzing, just so, not so much so I could win, but so much I could be like, oh yeah, you know, I could be that saviour, be like, oh yeah, no one knows the answer, I know this answer. Which again, I guess is very sort of like saviour complex of me or something, which is probably not a good thing, so. Really what I should be focusing on is that it's a fun time with my friends, and it is an absolute delight every single time. But yeah, honestly it was a fun round, because they often have specialist rounds in that one. Like last time that we did it was Eurovision, because that was like what was going on. I don't know what it was from time before, the most recent time, because we didn't go to the most recent time. Olympics makes sense for this one. But yeah, I don't know, pub quizzes are just fun. Quizzes in general are just kind of fun. I guess because it's just sort of like learning things, right? And maybe that's a nerdy thing, but it got me thinking about the fact that, like, in that quiz, you know, it's the first time that we've known for sure that one of the questions was wrong. And there's actually a caveat, to be fair, in a lot of sort of questions that you probably find if you actually do quizzes reasonably often, is you find that, oh, the more you know about something, it's not like the worse you do at it, but sometimes it can sort of trip you up. If you know too much about something, you might be like, well, technically it's like this. And you might overthink the answer, which could be significantly simpler. Because obviously the people doing the pub quiz are not looking for the most intense, hardest, like specific answer possible. They're looking for what is probably generally accepted as the right answer. So it certainly can lead to you overthinking things if you know too much about something. I don't mean this in a braggadocious way, but it gets me thinking, like, running these quizzes is pretty difficult, because obviously unless you know literally everything about everything when you're creating a quiz, a lot of times you won't be able to identify when something's wrong, right? You know, you look at something on Wikipedia and you believe Wikipedia, or you look at something and you take the first result on Google and it turns out that's not actually correct, and you're just like, oh no, what am I going to do? And the answer is, who knows? It's just sort of interesting to think about, like, how you deal with that sort of situation, because it's not really a good way to deal with it. Like, and I've seen it multiple times before, running a quiz. There's like a tenuous answer which not everyone agrees with, and then it becomes like, not like a shouting match, but it becomes like a hot topic of dispute of being like, that's not what the answer is, and then like people sort of like start appealing for points. I respect the person who ran the quiz for just being like, moving on, even though everyone was just like, there's no way that's right. But just sort of a strong energy just to be like, anyway, moving on, because we're not here to sort of argue about it. And also it doesn't really matter in this case because everyone got it wrong, but it is still funny to think about. Well, I think it's funny, amusing enough to think about, I suppose, to bring it up in an Animal Crossing episode. Yeah, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm doing my Shiny Colour Dailies episode at the same time, so I apologise for that. But yeah, it's a difficult part getting something wrong. I've been having like so much debate over it, because then it's sort of like you have to defend yourself in the public court of opinion. When a lot of people who do quizzes, presumably you do a quiz because you're pretty good at quizzing, so you know there's a decent chance you actually do know the genuine answer. But you do it because you're pretty good at quizzing, and then it's just like, oh, you know, now you had to defend yourself against people who are probably like decently like experts in this category, in this topic or whatever. and you have to be like, okay, this is just what I got off Google, come on, this is what we're taking as the right answer. It's exhausting, to be perfectly honest. Like, I definitely have run a big quiz before, but it was within a group of friends, so luckily it wasn't like too bad. There was only like 1 or 2 disputes for how mega a quiz it was, to be honest. So it genuinely wasn't like too bad. A time trying to sort of like untangle the disputes and things. But I mean, like, I was talking to like a friend, and she said that she was like she ran a quiz once, and then she was like, I'm never running a quiz again, because the people she ran it for were so competitive, and like every single answer people were just like challenging her, like not in a way where they're like necessarily being antagonistic to her, just more in the way of like, you know, sometimes some people are competitive, some people like are competitive enough that they, you know, they see it as more of an injustice of getting something wrong, which is, you know, fair in a sense, as long as it doesn't get out of hand. People just have different sort of levels of what competitiveness is acceptable or not for a quiz. So I don't blame her for not wanting to do a quiz ever again. It's not exactly the most stress-free thing in the world. But I don't know, like, I like to think of myself as good enough that I'd be able to identify things which are right, things which are wrong, or at least, you know, like double check my work. But sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's genuinely very difficult. So yeah, like being factually wrong, I suppose. Yeah, because there's like so many things you had to be an expert on. But to be fair, if you are like, I mean, to be fair, this person does like quizzes for a living. I don't know if he makes the quizzes. I think he works for a company who makes the quizzes. He just sort of like is a host. So I guess he's a quiz host for a living. But being a quiz host, presumably you don't get into that job space without at least being decently, like, he'd presumably be decently good at a quiz. The saddest thing about pub quizzes, I think, at least in England, is that so much of it relies on like a much older, like, British pop culture sort of knowledge. You know, things like soap operas come up. Like a decent man is just like, ah, man, I don't really know anything about soap operas. This is pretty untenable. One day I'll just like learn all the people from Coronation Street or something. Why? Just so I can do well at this one quiz question. No, if anything, the most difficult part is that we actually have quite a lot of overlap. Me and my friends, unsurprisingly, we're all the same age range and has similar interests. Not all the time, but overlapping interests. Which means that basically we cover a lot of the same ground, which is not very efficient for a quiz team. But, you know, would I take quiz efficiency, or would I take hanging out and having a great time with my friends? Obviously, hanging out and having a good time with my friends over all of that. It's just amusing to think about. Well, I think it's amusing to think about. How difficult it is. Like, it's like, I mean, this probably makes more sense if you're like a truly competitive person. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way, because as long as you keep the competition respectful. Does it have to be friendly? I don't think competition has to necessarily be friendly. Like, friendly in the sense that you're not antagonistic to each other. But that's kind of what I get by respectful. I mean, like, respectful trash talk, as long as both parties are sort of like willing into it, or being like respectful jabs at each other. Because like jabs at each other, you can say friendly jabs, but it's like, I mean, it doesn't feel like the definition of what friendly would be, like friendly competition. You can be a little bit competitive, you can be a little bit antagonistic, as long as it's respectful, right? But and like, who doesn't love to play a villain, and who doesn't love to defeat a villain? Even better. But like the difficulty of a host running the entire thing and then having to be an expert, I suppose, in all of this, and making like these judgment calls is difficult. Like, you know, University Challenge, that's a pretty difficult one. Like, I know Jeremy Paxman, I guess he's not the one running it anymore, I don't think, but he's not the host anymore. Has to make all these judgment calls at times. It's like, oh, did the university give enough details about what the answer is? Or was like, should they have given more details? Is it like ambiguous enough? Did they mean like what they actually meant, etc., etc.? Will they give it to them? You have to make all these smart judgment calls. So I wonder how like good Jeremy Paxman would be on the show itself. I don't know if he has someone in his ear who was like, yeah, I give it to them, or don't give it to them. Because, I mean, hosting and being, like, a good quizmaster, I think, is probably two very different, not very different skills, but decently different skills. Can they have overlap? Absolutely. But, I don't know. Because that's the thing with Jeopardy, right? But I don't know if Alex Trebek, how good he is at general knowledge. He's probably at least decently good. You've got to be at least decently good by sort of, like, osmosis if you host a quiz show. But I don't know if he's got, like, invigilators in his ear being like, oh yeah, give it to them, or don't give it to them, making snap judgment calls while not having to think about hosting at all. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I guess it's topical because it happens a lot in the Olympics. I know there was, like, a really recent one where there was, like, in one of the shooting competitions, there was, like, one, like, really clear shot or something which didn't get counted and cost someone a medal, maybe? I don't really know. Certainly there's always, like, rumours of corruption in a lot of sports. I don't really know because I don't know the sports well enough and the judging of the panels to know if there is the other claims of corruption are, like, fair or not. But it's certainly something where it's just like, oh, you know, it's hard to make judgment calls. Like, understanding from, like, imagining in the best situation, everyone's coming from, like, a place of good faith. Sometimes it's pretty hard to make the judgment calls. It's very easy, I think, to have, like, this sort of peer pressure, being like, oh, everyone is, like, opposing this judgment call. Do I stick to my guns or do I back down, etc., etc.? I guess you kind of have to not back down, otherwise it sort of, like, calls into a question your... Because, obviously, people are going to argue in favour of themselves all the time, right? If it's a competition, like, there's not really much benefit not to. As much as it is nice to say, oh yeah, like, and we all know good sportsmanship or something, but I guess by getting to the top, inherently you have, like, some level of competitiveness in you, and it's hard to resist that sort of siren call of being like, oh yeah, you know, if it's going in my favour, do I need to say anything? I don't know. Some people do, some people don't, because that is kind of like that is kind of a spirit of competition in the first place. But I'm sure, you know, assuming that for everyone, I think, is a little bit idealistic, shall we say. Anyway, judgment calls are pretty difficult to make, so I don't blame the quizmaster in this case for getting it wrong, because it seems like he even knew it was a little bit ridiculous, but he believed the information that he got from the site. So I just find it amusing, if anything, just being like, it was. I felt like I was losing my mind looking at the symbol. Like, did I look at it wrong? I was like, there's no way that symbol could have been for basketball. There's not even any sort of, like, indication that it was basketball at all. But who knows how it happened. Mistakes happen. I don't mean to hold that against him or anything. Just sort of like a very amusing situation, methinks. Yes, methinks. Anyway, I think I'll round this episode off here. I still need to actually record some Talos Principle for tomorrow. Because of the whole art fight business, I've not got any sort of backlog whatsoever. Which is certainly un poco difícil when it comes to recording stuff, but it's okay. Over this week, next week, hopefully I can sort of build it a little bit back up so it won't be too bad. But anyway, gonna round this episode off here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.